Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Please find your seats. We're going to get started shortly. Ladies and gentlemen, please take your seats and we will get started momentarily. Thank you. Thank you. Fantastic. Well, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, good morning and a warm welcome from us here at Scandinavia House, New York to all. Thank you to everyone here with us in person and to those who are following the live stream. My name is Tolu Olubumi. I'm a social impact executive and former United Nations appointee, and it is my honor to be the host and MC for this historic event, the launch of the third and final report of the High-Level Commission on the Nairobi Summit ICPD25 Follow-up, titled Sexual and Reproductive Justice Cannot Wait, All Rights, All People, Acting Now. In the midst of the high-level week of the United Nations General Assembly, we have designated 2 hours for this momentous occasion, as there are a few things that we would like to share as the High-Level Commission concludes its 3-year term. As you may recall, the High-Level Commission on ICPD25 Follow-up was established following the 2019 landmark Nairobi Summit as an independent body to track progress on the implementation of the 1,300 commitments made at that summit. This includes commitments made by 145 governments, as well as commitments made by diverse stakeholders that came together in Nairobi, all of which are captured in the overarching 12 global commitments that make up the Nairobi Statement, the global community's promise to finish the unfinished business of implementing the Program of Action of the 1994 International Conference on Population and Development, ICPD. The Commission, which is made up of a broad range of eminent leaders from diverse fields, has worked very hard. It has published 2 highly acclaimed reports, which it has established and has engaged numerous advocacy events over the past 3 years. The Commission has put the framework of sexual and reproductive justice on the map. Today, as the world prepares for next year's 30th anniversary of the ICPD, we will witness the launch of the Commission's 3rd and final report. But first, please allow me to share a few housekeeping notes. For those with us online, the event is live streamed on the UNFPA YouTube channel in English, French, and Spanish, and it has closed captioning available. We invite you to please engage with us by typing your comments into the chat, and we might actually feature it in the live stream. In particular, please let us know where you are watching from. We invite you to engage with us again, on your social media platforms as well. We have designed a program to inform and inspire and really truly want you through your social media channels to engage with us using the hashtag all people, or all rights, all people. Again, that's hashtag all rights, all people. As we kick off this morning's opening segment, I am honored to be joined on stage here by the Commission's co-chairs. I'd like to welcome to the stage His Excellency, Dr. Jakaya Kikwete, former President of the United Republic of Tanzania, and Her Excellency, the Right Honorable Michaëlle Jean, 27th Governor General of Canada, and former Secretary. Good morning. Good morning. How are you? Very well. Welcome. You're welcome. Fantastic. Now, it is wonderful to have, the co-host of the historic Nairobi Summit on ICPD25 with us, and a pleasure to be joined by none other by the UNFPA Executive Director, Dr. Natalia Kanem. Good morning, madam. It's lovely to see you again. I'm also thrilled to welcome to the stage His Excellency Dan Jorgensen, Minister of the Minister of Development, Cooperation, and Global Climate Policy of Denmark. Welcome, sir. Unfortunately, Her Excellency Ambassador Njabi Kanyugu, Deputy Permanent Representative, Permanent Mission of the Republic of Kenya to the United Nations, was pulled away at the last minute and unable to join us today, but she does send her regrets and is very much looking forward to watching the live stream. Now, with that said, I am honored to invite our first speaker to the podium, His Excellency Dr. Jakaya Kikwete, former President of the United Republic of Tanzania and co-chair of the High-Level Commission on the Nairobi Summit on ICPD25 Follow-up, to deliver opening remarks. Welcome, sir.
Good morning. Your Excellency Natalia Kanem, Executive Director of UNFPA, Your Excellency Dan Jorgensen, Minister of Development, Cooperation, and Global Climate Policy of Denmark, Her Excellency Michaëlle Jean, former Governor General of Canada and former Secretary General of the International Organization of La Francophonie. I hope I'm pronouncing it well. Excellencies, ministers, ambassadors, members of the diplomatic corps, fellow commissioners, and I see there are very many of us today, that is good. Invited guests, ladies and gentlemen. It is an honor and a pleasure for me to speak at this historic occasion of the launch of the final report of the High-Level Commission on ICPD25 Follow-up. As we gather here on the sidelines of the 78th session of the UN General Assembly and following the just concluded SDG Summit, we, the High-Level Commission on Nairobi Summit on ICPD25 Follow-up, we launch our concluding report titled Sexual and Reproductive Justice Cannot Wait, All Rights, All People, Act Now. The Executive Director appointed this commission in September 2020 to help monitor and report on the progress in advancing the commitments made at the landmark 2019 Nairobi International Conference on Population and Development, ICPD25. The High-Level Commission was particularly tasked to follow up on the implementation of the 12 global overarching commitments contained in the Nairobi Statement at the end of the summit. The 27 commissioners, my fellow co-chair, Her Excellency Michaëlle Jean, and I are grateful and proud to have been chosen to undertake this important task. My fellow co-chair and I feel privileged to have served as leaders of this wonderful group of very bright, highly experienced, highly competent, and highly committed global citizens, drawn from diverse backgrounds. I would like to thank all the commissioners for their understanding and cooperation. They made our life, Madam Co-Chair and me, very easy. Your Excellency, Dr. Natalia Kanem, it is with humility and great sense of accomplishment that we are gathered here this morning to present to you our third and final report. To members of the High-Level Commission, this act symbolizes the successful completion of the task you assigned us to do. Thank you for the confidence and trust you had in us. Huge commendation is due to you for your vision in convening and entrusting us with our important charge. With it, we have honored our responsibility to produce and submit to you the annual public reports on the implementation of the Nairobi Summit commitments. This is the third. The Nairobi Summit took a comprehensive view of the program of action of the International Conference on Population and Development. That 1994 groundbreaking conference held in Cairo delivered a new vision about how the world should address the relationships between population and development. The 179 countries that adopted the program of action boldly affirmed that ensuring optimal quality of life for populations was key. Moreover, for the first time, the countries made a global agreement that recognized the centrality of addressing sexual and reproductive health and reproductive rights in societies. 25 years later, the Nairobi Summit defined a roadmap for accelerating progress to achieve the ICPD program of action as a central pillar for achieving the global goals for the 2030 Agenda for Development, for Sustainable Development. It resulted in over 1,300 voluntary commitments by governments and diverse stakeholders, and the endorsement of 12 core global commitments to advance sexual and reproductive health and justice, the empowerment of women, and gender equality by 2030. The main focus of the commitments was to ensure the accelerated and full implementation of programs and the availability of financing to achieve the following by 2030. 1, zero unmet needs for contraception. 2, zero preventable maternal death. And 3, zero gender-based violence and harmful practices such as child marriage and female genital mutilation. Our independent high-level commission has launched 2 reports, first in November 2021, followed by second a year later, each time coinciding with the marking of the Nairobi Summit anniversary. No exceptions, no exclusions. Realizing sexual and reproductive health, rights, and justice for all was the Commission's first report, which introduced sexual and reproductive justice as a framework for taking forward the Nairobi commitments. Then the 2022 report titled Sexual and Reproductive Justice as the vehicle to deliver the Nairobi Summit commitments gave details on how the framework could be utilized to advance the commitments. Both reports included a traffic rights scorecard aligned to the 12 global commitments, showing through regional snapshots what has been achieved, where there has been movement, and where commitments were lagging behind. Our 2023 report synthesizes the main messages of the earlier reports and re-emphasizes the call for sexual and reproductive health and justice to be a central mode for achieving the ICPD program of action. Especially, we move to commemorate its 30th, especially as we move to commemorating its 30th anniversary in 2024. Excellencies, distinguished participants, the aftermath of the COVID-19 pandemic, conflict and climate crisis have triggered the unraveling of decades of progress as we now see widening inequity and higher poverty levels. Displacement is the unfortunate way of life for many and has been used like a weapon to create more threats and exploit divisions. Democracy is also under threat, and the phobia culture is on the increase, whether it be xenophobia, homophobia, or transphobia. Despite these factors, the High-Level Commission has been able to propose a comprehensive and well-defined blueprint to continue to guide the elimination of discrimination faced by women, girls, and the marginalized in accessing the information and services they require for optimal sexual health and for their inalienable rights to be upheld. Certainly, we recognize the progress. Some countries have factored achieving sexual and reproductive health and rights into their national legislations. Many have improved their health care systems to give greater access to reproductive care. Midwives have been made available. Yet there still remain major challenges, including financing these services. This lack of adequate financing towards reproductive health and reproductive justice results in many being left behind and open to discrimination. The discriminatory practices leave individuals without bodily autonomy and the right to make choices about their lives. The final report summarizes the main messages of this high-level commission of the last 3 years and creates linkages which will provide for better monitoring of the ICPD's progress. As the 30th anniversary of the ICPD approaches, what is needed now is a laser-focused level of vigilance to further advance these ICPD commitments. Our global actions must continue in an environment which is engaging, but yet open-minded. Criticism must be at the level of constructiveness so that these recommendations of the report of the High-Level Commission are taken forward by multiple stakeholders. All partners have a role to play: governments, civil society, and youth, older individuals, minorities, vulnerable groups, all people everywhere. The global efforts at development within societies must be underpinned by sexual and reproductive justice. If we are to see a world which is fair and inclusive, a justice perspective has to be central to the attainment and transformation of these rights to empower all humanity. The recommendations of the High-Level Commission show a clear path towards better sexual and reproductive justice, rights, and justice. Work that we can further advance together and with our individual constituencies. The Commission attaches special importance to ensuring that in doing so, we empower young people as the next generation to carry forward to goals from Cairo and Nairobi. The work doesn't end today. Let's recommit to leaving no one behind, because everyone deserves to live in a peaceful and just society where their rights and dignity are upheld. Again, I thank you for having entrusted me to serve as co-chair of this high-level commission. I extend sincere gratitude to Her Excellency Michaëlle Jean, my fellow co-chair, twins, born of different mothers. And to Dr. Kanem, UNFPA Executive, our illustrious UNFPA Executive Director. To each high-level commissioner, please receive commendation on a job very well done. Thanks to the high-level commission's secretariat, who worked diligently to ensure that this high-level commission delivered its mandate. I would assert beyond expectations. I now call on everyone in my hearing to scale up your actions to further achieve the ICPD program of action. Thank you all, wishing all of us the best of success as we continue the work ahead of us. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you for your leadership and your remarks, highlighting the ICPD program of action, as well as the high-level commission and their contributions to sustainable development. Next, I would love to invite the high-level commission co-chair, my apologies. Forgive me. One of our speakers on the stage, unfortunately, has to leave early, so we've had to shuffle the program a little bit. So, sir, Denmark has been just an incredible co-host on the 2019 Summit on ICPD25 Follow-up and supported the functioning of the High-Level Commission on the Nairobi Summit on the ICPD25 Follow-up. With recognition of the ongoing commitment of Denmark, it is my pleasure to invite up next His Excellency Dan Jorgensen, Minister of Development, Cooperation, and Global Climate Policy of Denmark, to give a statement. Thank you, sir.
Thank you so much for that. Friends, I am deeply honored to stand before you today. Achieving sexual and reproductive health and rights carries value in itself. It's about dignity, it's about integrity. But apart from that, it's also important for other reasons. It's important for a society as a whole. It's important if you want sustainable development, economic growth. It's important when you want to strengthen resilience for populations facing climate change and human-made disasters. So for those reasons and many more, this has top priority for Denmark. We proudly hosted the Nairobi Summit 4 years ago. This milestone event marked an ambitious, collective pledge to ensure women's and girls' rights to make decisions about their own bodies. In order to follow through on the 1,300 commitments made at the summit, Denmark supported the establishment of the High-Level Commission. I'm proud that Her Royal Highness Crown Prince Mary of Denmark is a distinguished member of the Commission as well. Unfortunately, she's not able to join us today, but she sends her warm regards. I commend the High-Level Commission for their tireless efforts and for pointing to areas where we can and must do better. Through joint global efforts and investments, progress has been achieved on key aspects of sexual and reproductive health and rights. More women have access to contraception, and we've witnessed a decline in female genital mutilation. However, as the report launched today shows, a lot of work remains to be done. Pregnancy and childbirth remains the leading cause of death among teenage girls in developing nations. 1 out of 10 girls in these countries is married before her 15th birthday. Every 11th minute, a woman or girl is killed by a family member. Humanitarian crises worsen the right for women and girls. On recent visits to Fiji, Nigeria, Ethiopia, and Kenya, I have personally witnessed the devastating impacts of climate change. I've seen how it can intensify existing gender inequalities and prolong the cycle of poverty and marginalization of women. We must rally together to reverse these trends. Denmark is committed to do our part for a strong and collective effort on the ICPD agenda. In 2024, the Danish government plans to allocate more than $120 million to support organizations working to improve sexual and reproductive health and rights. As we approach the 30th anniversary of the ICPD Action Plan, it is crucial to sustain momentum. The world depends on us to keep the torch, which was ignited at the Nairobi Summit 4 years ago. Our objective is clear: to advance rights and choices for all. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Your Excellency, for those remarks and for your leadership. We're sad to see you go, but we understand that you do need to leave us early. Thank you. Thank you very much, sir. As a reminder, the live stream is available in French, English, and Spanish. So there is interpretation available for folks, simultaneous interpretation. Now I would like to invite Her Excellency, the Right Honorable Michaëlle Jean, 27th Governor General of Canada and co-chair of the High-Level Commission on the Nairobi Summit and ICPD25 Follow-up, to the lectern to share her remarks. Welcome, ma'am.
Bonjour. Je n'entends qu'un seul bonjour dans la salle. Voilà. Excellencies, Excellences, my dear co-chair, President Kikwete, we call each other twins, brother and sister. Yeah, and as we were in Tanzania together, in Zanzibar, as we stood together addressing the populations and validating the excellent work being done on the ground, it was obvious that we are twins. Madam Executive Director of the United Nations Fund for Populations and Development, my dear friend, Dr. Natalia Kanem, très unique en son genre. She's an amazing woman. It's a pleasure to work with you. High-level commissioners, would you stand, please, so we can see you? Thank you so much. Yes. And each of them is also very unique men and women, very committed. And it's been like an incredible journey to do this work together. Dear colleagues, Dr. Saskia Shelskens, coordinator of the very dynamic secretariat and team in charge of the high-level commission. Please stand. DJ. You can't imagine the work that they've done to make this happen, to follow up the whole work. The logistic was considerable. Imagine all these high-level commissioners speaking from around the world and coming together as one. À vous, chers commissaires, chers collègues, et à tous ceux et celles qui nous rejoignent en personne et en ligne pour cette session spéciale, mesdames, messieurs, mes très chaleureuses salutations. Il ne semble vraiment pas si loin le temps où mon distingué coprésident, son Excellence le docteur Jakaya Kikwete, ancien président de la Tanzanie, et moi-même avons accepté sans hésitation de diriger cette commission de haut niveau sur le suivi du sommet de Nairobi, rappelant de toute urgence, nous avons entendu le ministre tout à l'heure, les engagements pris 25 ans plus tôt lors de la conférence internationale sur la population et le développement, qui s'est tenue au Caire, en Égypte, en 1994, et qui est le plus souvent désigné par l'acronyme suivi de la CIPD25, en anglais ICPD25 Follow-up. I don't like acronyms, so I had to say what it is. But I understand that, it's a tendency now to to call everything by acronyms, but we need to say what it is, the nature of the work. So greetings to all who are joining us in person and online for this special session. When my distinguished co-chair, His Excellency Dr. Jakaya Kikwete, and I accepted the call to lead this high-level commission, our mandate as given to us by the UNFPA Executive Director, Dr. Natalia Kanem, was very clear. Our 29-member commission was established, independent commission was established to advocate for and report on the commitments of the 2019 Nairobi Summit aimed at fulfilling the promise of the ICPD Program of Action of the Cairo International Conference on Population and Development, focused on the full recognition of sexual and reproductive fundamental rights as a matter of justice for everyone, everywhere. So the Nairobi Summit, which I and others here had the privilege to attend, served to re-energize this global movement. It reinforced the fact that achieving sustainable development is about investing in social inclusion and policies based on human rights. So, as a high-level commission, we were charged with presenting annually a report to the UNFPA Executive Director, identifying progress and gaps in implementing the Nairobi Summit commitments and advocating for their further implementation. We come a long way, we still have a long way to go. Indeed, the High-Level Commission's 2021 report, No Exceptions, No Exclusions, Realizing Sexual and Reproductive Health, Rights and Justice for All, and the 2022 report, Sexual and Reproductive Justice as a Vehicle to Deliver the Nairobi Summit Commitments, both advance that sexual and reproductive justice is a framework for the world to achieve the ICPD Program of Action and Sustainable Development. So our third and concluding report, titled Sexual and Reproductive Justice Cannot Wait, All Rights, All People Acting Now, serves as a chapeau and summary of the key perspectives and recommendations of the High-Level Commission. As stated in the report, It demonstrates the power of sexual and reproductive justice as a framework to link issues, movements, and monitoring to keep progress on the commitments on track. You will recall with me that sexual and reproductive justice is a universal concept built on sexual and reproductive health and rights. The concept recognizes that structural inequalities and intersecting forms of oppression fundamentally determine sexual and reproductive decision-making. In our final report, the Commission strongly reiterates our call for sexual and reproductive justice. For we acknowledge that while gains have been made, sexual and reproductive health continues to reflect deep-seated patterns of discrimination and marginalisation. Et nous constatons que des lois injustes, des investissements insuffisants et des pratiques de soins de santé non conformes aux droits humains sont des éléments de violence et des éléments d'abus continus à l'encontre des femmes, des filles, des minorités, des personnes handicapées et d'autres groupes marginalisés. Ces disparités sont d'autant plus aggravées par des écarts profondément injustes en matière de richesse, en matière de participation à la vie politique et de droits humains. Nous, la Commission de haut niveau, affirmons dans notre rapport final que la justice sexuelle et reproductive est indispensable à l'avènement de sociétés pleinement développées, équitables et inclusives. En outre, nous soulignons que la justice en matière de sexualité et de procréation devrait être au cœur de la CIPD30 qui commémore 30 ans plus tard les recommandations importantes, audacieuses et claires de la Conférence internationale du Caire sur la population et le développement de 1994. Car cette perspective peut et doit transformer la santé et les droits en matière de sexualité et de procréation en une source d'émancipation, une source d'autonomie dans la vie des êtres humains. So as we move closer towards the ICPD 30, commemoration and building of the broader call to action, the High-Level Commission advances 5 priorities for sexual and reproductive justice. We assert in our report that each priority has strong evidence-based potential to disrupt discrimination and injustice and contribute to global and national development goals. And together, they invite participation by all actors in government, parliaments, the private sector, and civil society to take the following actions. 1, invest in universal health coverage and health professionals, particularly midwives, for health and justice. You heard me, Carla, right? The Commission emphasizes that there will be no sexual and reproductive justice without midwives. They are the most important factor in ending preventable maternal and newborn death, and moreover, can provide up to 90% of all sexual and reproductive health care. Second, empower young people and provide comprehensive sexuality education to uphold their rights and choices. Age-appropriate comprehensive sexuality education opens opportunities to improve family life and relationships and to model and affirm human rights and gender, racial, and other forms of equality. It must respond to the varying needs of vulnerable groups, such as LGBTQ2+ youth, youth living with disabilities, and young people in humanitarian crisis, including the needs that they themselves express. As a Canadian, I must say that it's very, very troubling to see what is happening right now in Canada. Major demonstrations of anti-LGBTQ2+ in every city across the country. It's very, very troubling, and of course, it means that we should never take anything for granted. The march continues. achieve justice-informed universal social protection. The Commission emphasizes that sexual and reproductive justice depends on universal social protections that fully responds to intersecting forms of discrimination so that no one is left behind. While many countries have made significant progress in extending social protection, over half of humanity still goes without it. Is that acceptable? No. Disrupt discrimination through innovation. The Commission calls on businesses, large philanthropies, and civil society to push for more deliberate alignment of technology and innovation with justice and public goods, moving past the assumption that technology by itself is a panacea. This implies not just providing technology, but explicitly recognizing and mitigating biases and harms across diverse groups of people and geographies. And we see some corporations coming really on board with us on this importance of a shared responsibility and the need to take action. Unleash the unifying power of movements for justice. This is the fifth recommendation. The Commission has clearly articulated that all forms of justice are interrelated, rooted in human rights and dignity, and lead to people-centered development. People-centered development. The Commission contends that people united for justice will achieve it and encourages proponents of sexual and reproductive justice to find common cause and strength by joining advocates for climate justice, economic justice, gender equality, youth empowerment, disability rights, among many others. So, Excellencies, distinguished participants, we conclude our final report with a reminder that while justice remains the goal, people in all their diversity have the right to define their path and achieve it and be guaranteed safe passage as they progress to freedom of better choices and better lives. This is especially important with an eye on the next generation that needs our support and that rightfully calls on us to be meaningfully engaged. It is with that in mind that President Kikwete and myself couldn't be more pleased that today we'll also see the launch of a youth-friendly version of the Commission's report and a ICPD engagement guide by young people for young people. And beyond that, we are thrilled that the Commission's traffic lights scorecard that offers annual regional snapshots on the status of implementation of the 12 global Nairobi commitments by region is from now on also available as a user-friendly online dashboard and can be accessed at unf.pa/GCMF-DASH. Can someone in the room repeat that? unf.pa/GCMH-DASH. So we invite you to have a look at it and explore the rich data along with the detailed country profiles contained in the dashboard and express our hope that you will continue to use this tool for tracking ICPD and the Nairobi follow-up in years to come. And I count on each of us to utilize the body of work of the High-Level Commission, the main reports and complementary resources to ensure healthier and more fulfilling lives for all, with justice at the center. So thanks to all co-chair, Excellency President Kikwete, commissioners, the indispensable secretariat in UNFPA under the leadership of Ms. Saskia Shelskens, all concerned for our leadership and service during the tenure of the High-Level Commission. Thank you, Dr. Natalia Kanem, for your determination, your strength, your leadership. And with this, it is an honor and pleasure as co-chairs to hand you officially our third and final report, Sexual and Reproductive Justice Cannot Wait, All Rights, All People Acting Now. Okay.
Thank you so much for that impassioned remark. Thank you, thank you, thank you. And thank you for your stewardship and leadership as co-chair of the High-Level Commission and for sharing an overview of the key recommendations put forward by the High-Level Commission. I'm going to hand. At this time, we've heard from the co-chairs. It is my honor to invite Dr. Kikwete to join Madam Jean in presenting the 2023 report of the High-Level Commission, Sexual and Reproductive Justice Cannot Wait, All Rights, All People Acting Now, to Dr. Natalia Kanem. Thank you. You need one more?
Thank you. Hey.
To present. You went ahead of me. You didn't let me make my big reveal, but I love it. Please, please. We're so excited about this report. Thank you, thank you, thank you so much. Now, for those in the room, I want you to know that the online version of the report is already available. Please continue taking photos. Just information for those in the room. It's already available to you via the bookmarks with the QR code. Thank you for that. I hope everyone got their photos. Do you want to make them do it again? Because I have the microphone. I could absolutely make them do it again. Again, for those in the room, the online version of the report is already available to you via the bookmarks with the QR code, and hard copies of the report will be made available to you as well as you leave here today. Also, please note that the online version of the report is available in English, French, Spanish, and Arabic. Thank you all again. Now, as you have presented the reports to Dr. Kanem, I would like to invite her up to give her remarks. So introducing Dr. Natalia Kanem, who you've heard so much about, the UNFPA Executive Director, to the lectern to give her remarks. Welcome, madam.
Woohoo! So we got the report. Excellencies, dear co-chairs, distinguished guests, dear commissioners, Radhika, Alexandra, so many of you so dear to this work, dear colleagues, dear partners, dear friends, it's really a pleasure to be here. This launch represents something that we have idealized but is rarely achieved. Working across silos in a coherent way with very high-level commissioners to be able to produce a report with such a title, Sexual and Reproductive Justice Cannot Wait. All rights, all people acting now, was certainly a labor of love. It was a demand upon the time of very busy professionals, of young people from all regions. And I just want to applaud the commissioners once more, because this title speaks to the moment. Some say it's a moment of pushback, but just like in Cairo, when UNFPA and the United Nations system, in its wisdom, asked the world to put people at the center of development and to link environment, as we were calling it then, climate, to women's issues. We stand at a time when women and girls are demanding justice and equality, and that we step up and accelerate the response that they deserve. I think the path ahead is clear, because thanks to this commission and your efforts, ably led by none other than His Excellency Jakaya Kikwete, the former president of the United Republic of Tanzania, and none other than Her Excellency, the Right Honorable Michaëlle Jean, the former Governor General of Canada and Principal of the Francophonie. With their leadership and their engagement, hard work over the past 3 years in the follow-up to the Nairobi Summit, which again convened a sector with young people vibrating with their leadership talent to let us know that the international community must be accountable to the promises that were made in Cairo with its platform of action, and now with voluntary commitments through the Nairobi Summit. And we know that we live in a world where it is not easy to have respectful dialogue, much less consensus. This is the post-COVID fallout world. This is a world where polarization and xenophobia, as we've heard, seems to be increasing. And certainly it is a world desperately in need of peace in our homes, in our communities, in our hearts, and in the world. Now, despite that climate of questioning fundamental human rights, of questioning the legitimacy of women and girls and everyone demanding their bodily autonomy, what this Commission on ICPD25 has accomplished is to strengthen resolve, point the road ahead with tremendous support and guidance, of course, from our local implementing partners on the ground. And it's been a triumph, I believe, for the governments of Denmark and Kenya, who were the co-conveners of that 2019 Nairobi Summit. So when you pair the kind of critical data and evidence that this commission has considered, it means a high level of analysis. It also means that conceptually, we have to think about reproductive health as a holistic venture. And how wonderful it is that this independent commission saw fit to promote rights and justice as the basis, as the bridge between the Nairobi commitments and ICPD 30 next year in 2024. And I will recall that it was African-American women in the United States who, on the road to Cairo, as it was called, coined this phrase, reproductive justice, which now resounds and echoes once again as a frame for us to look at this holistic sexual and reproductive health and rights agenda. But we also heard that progress has been uneven and overall too slow. Why should there still be communities that lack adequate access when universal access has been our cry for 3 decades? Comprehensive sexuality education is something that helps young people navigate their adolescence and their work lives. The communities that face the highest rates of maternal mortality and unintended pregnancy are the locus of our attention, because we know that accelerated progress is going to mean better well-being and a much happier existence for those women and girls who right now are among the left behind. The escalating risk of gender-based violence and harmful practices is one of the vast inequities that still remain, fueled by a pattern of exclusion. And this exclusion may take shape for a whole long list of reasons, but none of these reasons are valid. And I'm very proud that the Independent Commission has called out these inequities and insisted that things like systemic racism and abuse in maternal health systems that are killing women and girls be called out. And the call for reproductive justice is one for accountability for inalienable human rights that requires action. And that action in community after community has to come with a message and a direction. And I too trust young people to be those messengers. This requires the continuous attention and mobilization of everyone to keep the promise of the ICPD agenda. Moreover, the report launched today speaks collectively, but also individually, about how we meet those 12 core Nairobi commitments and achieve the 3 zeros that will transform the world. To meet the unmet need of contraception is part of empowerment for that woman and for that adolescent girl. Zero preventable maternal deaths calls upon us to tell the truth about statistics that underlie deaths during pregnancy, childbirth, and thereafter. And hidden in those statistics are lives, the life of an adolescent girl who was pregnant too soon, who could not say no to coerced sexual activity, nor could she tell her parents because of the stigma and the shame that attends to early sexuality and her dilemma of what to do, which in some instances will lead to unsafe abortion and all of the consequences that that implies. The statistics on maternal mortality also hide the fate of the woman with a fistula, with a rupture of the womb that is going to lead to incontinence, and again, isolation and a life of misery that only surgery can repair. Therefore, prevention, therefore, midwives, therefore, telling the truth to young people, so essential to prevent maternal deaths, which are in the main preventable. Oranging the world against gender-based violence is something that UNFPA has done proudly for years. But we don't want to do this for another set of decades and years. And now we know that it is going to take the whole of society and the men who today hold the power in a patriarchal world, not only to denounce gender-based violence in all its forms when it occurs, but to prioritize the dignity and respect of a woman, whether she's in a humanitarian setting, whether she is walking on her village path, or whether she's sitting in a boardroom. This is a universal crisis, and it must be elevated to that level. So let us use the findings of this comprehensive report wisely. The excellent work of this commission is part of continuing to address structural inequality, not piecemeal, but looking in a systemic way at what are the structural barriers that stand between women and girls exercising their full human rights. I look forward to addressing the co-chairs and wider membership of the high-level commission later today, but for now, all I want to do is reiterate my deep appreciation. Thank you, thank you, thank you. As the civil rights activist Angela Davis has said, today, I am no longer accepting the things I cannot change. I'm changing the things I cannot accept. Thank you very much.
I mean, anytime you quote Angela Davis, you can have me hollering. So excellent, excellent. Thank you, Dr. Kanem, for your vision to establish the High-Level Commission and its effort to track and report on ICPD commitments and keeping the Nairobi Promise alive. Thank you. Another round of applause for all of our high-level speakers. Thank you. At this time, though I will be lonely up here, I invite our speakers to please return to their seats in the auditorium. Thank you so much. Thank you all. Another round of applause. Well, that was certainly a fantastic opening to our program today, and I'm indeed quite grateful to everyone that spoke, including the Denmark, who the minister from Denmark who had to leave us early. At this time, Excellencies, participants in the room and online, I invite you to watch a video featuring some of the high-level commissioners and some central messages they wish to share with us.
Sexual reproductive justice.
Sexual reproductive health and justice.
Reproductive justice.
Reproductive justice.
Sexual reproductive justice.
But what is sexual and reproductive justice exactly? Why does it matter? Why talk about justice and not just about sexual and reproductive rights? Because justice requires achieving those rights with no exceptions or exclusions. Justice means removing all barriers to sexual and reproductive rights, legal, social, economic, environmental, or anything else standing in the way of bodily autonomy for all women and girls. For the last 3 years, the High-Level Commission on the Nairobi Summit on ICPD25 Follow-up has led a global call for sexual and reproductive justice. It has tirelessly advocated commitments to women's health and rights and monitored progress to keep the world on track. COVID-19, political backlash, and economic upheaval made the work challenging, but the Commission never stopped. Combining former heads of state, activists, business leaders, academic experts, and youth advocates, the Commission launched 3 landmark reports. These put the world on notice. The time for sexual and reproductive justice is now. In 2023, the third and final report, Sexual and Reproductive Justice Cannot Wait, All Rights, All People, Acting Now, offered a summary call for action. It showed how linking diverse issues and movements of people can accelerate the quest for justice. Now is the moment to act. Each and every one of us can help make the Nairobi commitments and sexual and reproductive justice a reality. For all, for good. What will you do?
Well done, commissioners, and what an impactful video. And what will you do? I love that. I love that so much. Thank you for educating us on why sexual and reproductive justice matters in achieving development goals, especially for women and girls, those left behind, and indeed everyone. As a reminder, we are also streaming this event on YouTube. You have separate links for Spanish and French, and we also have a feed with live caption if you need it. Please share your thoughts in the chat. So we might just feature it in the live stream. Well, as we move on to our next segment, it is my pleasure now, since we've heard opening statements from our co-chairs, from Dr. Kanem, and we've seen the video. It is time for a panel discussion. Through this moderated discussion, we will share further insights into the Commission's 2023 report, which I hope you will be reading in the coming days and weeks. I will welcome each panelist individually to the stage to take their seats, starting with the seat closest to me on that end. And to start, I would like to welcome Mr. Martin Shangang, Secretary General, Interparliamentary Union. You'll be sitting next to me, sir. Welcome. Next up, we have Her Excellency Lindwe Zulu, Minister of Social Development, South Africa, and Chairperson, Partners in Population and Development. Welcome, Minister. Next, we have Martin Karatsov. I apologize if I got that wrong, which I'm certain I did. Board member and chair of the Youth Steering Committee of ILGA World. Welcome. Next, I'd like to welcome Dr. Sarah Pantuliano, Chief Executive, ODI. Welcome, madam. Up next is Mr. Jean-William Changron, Vice President, Government and Public Affairs of Royal Philips. Welcome, sir. And last but not least is Dr. Myrna Cunningham, First Vice President of the Fund for Development of Indigenous Peoples of Latin America and the Caribbean. Welcome. Well, there we go. Yay. Welcome, everyone. So thrilled to have you here with us. Now we're going to do one round of questions for each of you, and I'm really excited to dive right into the conversation. Sarah, if I may start with you, can you help us reflect on the progress and lack thereof, actually, of implementing the Nairobi Summit's commitments, particularly the 12 global commitments over the past 3 years? And could you also talk about why the High-Level Commission is insisting on using the framework of sexual and reproductive justice as a way to achieve the ICPD and Nairobi goals?
Absolutely. I'll try and be brief. I mean, it's been 3 years of work with incredible colleagues, and as everyone has recognized, the leadership of both the co-chairs and the inspiration of Natalia in putting together this commission. I mean, go back to Nairobi and what Nairobi achieved. 172 countries, 80 youth-led or serving organizations, they all came together to agree on 12 fundamental global commitments. That was pretty remarkable. It was a moment of hope. It was a moment where we felt we had a roadmap for action that was clear, and the commission was put in place to accompany that roadmap for action. And we have made some marginal progress. Some has been mentioned, little bit, improved in maternal health care, sure. Youth engagement, yeah. But I'll quote from the report, our global monitoring framework says that no significant change on the full, effective, and accelerated implementation and funding of the ICPD program of action has been achieved. And that is why the report says so strongly that we need to act now. Because, we know that SRHR is central to the well-being of humanity, and yet what we're seeing is, regressive forces that are really pushing against this, progress everywhere. These are very well coordinated, funded, organized, regressive forces that are really, impeding, not just impeding, they're actually pushing, the rollback of the progress we've made in the past. And so, that's why we're seeing some of the lack of progress that we've heard on, the rates of child marriage, on the how many girls under 18 still sort of end up having children, how we've made very, little progress in seeing inclusive SRHR policies, around the world. And how, and I want to say that very clearly, we've seen unacceptable regression in, abortion care. Yes, we've seen Colombia and Mexico decriminalize access to abortion care, but at the same time, yes, I think they do deserve an applause. But at the same time, we've seen the US, Indonesia, Poland, they've entrenched measures that restrict this access. And so sexual and reproductive justice, you ask why that framework? Because it's the roadmap that tries to put a universal, unifying call in a polarized world. It's trying to really bring together a platform for transformative change for everyone, everywhere, which means bringing together all the different movements, from gender justice to climate justice to all the movements that can counter these anti-rights, sort of coalition that we are all witnessing. And I want to stress the everywhere, because even with the Nairobi commitments, there is a lot of emphasis on this being a problem for low and middle income countries, the access being for low and middle income countries. That's absolutely not true. This is a global problem. We see some of the biggest offenders in the so-called North. I'm an independent commissioner, I can mention them: US, Poland, Malta, Hungary. That's where we're seeing some of the worst. And it's not just countries, it's also within countries. If you look at the history of SRHR, you see that they are denied to particular groups. They are denied to colonized people that have been in history, to women and girls of color, to people with disability, to queer people, to people, to refugees, to other persecuted groups. This is what is fundamental, that we realize, who this agenda discriminates, excludes, and the harm, that it produces. So just to conclude, I think this framework of justice is so fundamental, because that unity is critical to counter the rollback in rights and really drive change for all rights, for all people. The stakes are high. That's why the report says we need to act now, because the denial of these rights harms people, is real, is something that really affects individuals. And all of us need to put this at the forefront of our collective advocacy. So as the video said, what will you do?
What will you do? Thank you, Sarah. As always, I love your passion. I love your energy. You talked about progress, regression, how this problem is all over. We can't just say it's the North, it's the South, it's all over. But there are places where we're seeing some progress. Minister Zulu, if we could talk about progress in South Africa, a front-runner country putting the critical framework of sexual and reproductive justice into practice. What has happened since last year, and what lessons can you share that other countries, some of the ones that Sarah has mentioned, could learn from as we move forward?
Thank you very much, Program Director and Moderator, and a very good morning to everyone who is here. I think from a South African perspective, we moved from what will you do right when we started and went back home from Nairobi. It was my first time as a new Minister of Social Development, but I acted upon the work that had been done by my predecessors since the adoption of the ICPD at the time. And what we did was to continuously strengthen the dialogue that had long started in South Africa in as far as sexual and reproductive rights are concerned. I think the progress that we can really talk about in the main is to keeping the agenda alive. And keeping the agenda alive is removing it from ourselves who are privileged, who sit in better positions of being able to make the right decisions and take the decisions. And in particular, when you think about the young girls and the women who are unable to make those decisions. So we're keeping the agenda alive. But firstly, it was important for us to look at what government can do from a legislative point of view, and what government can do in response to already very active South African women who are always out there, standing up for both women and girls. And we already this year we held the National Sexual and Reproductive Justice Conference in 2023 as part of the activities that we had decided we were going to do. But also we have the policy for the prevention and management of learner pregnancy, which is one of the biggest problems that we have in South Africa, unplanned pregnancies, which in my view goes back to what happens in the family before they even get out onto the street, what happens to the communities where they live, what happens on street to street, house to house, what happens there, and what do we do to empower both boys and girls, because it's not always about the girls, it's also the boys that are important. But most importantly, when you look at teenage pregnancy, it's not 10-year-old that makes another 10-year-old pregnant. It's some old man somewhere who makes that wrong decision of taking young girls for granted from school, and they're taking advantage, obviously, of the poverty and the hunger that most of these children come from. So the issue of what we do in terms of family, even though we know that family today is no longer the same as it was many years ago, we need to be able to look at family from a broader perspective. Lastly, we also have the National Strategic Plan on Gender-Based Violence, because gender-based violence continues to be one of the biggest challenges we face in South Africa. But I must say that we can see progress from there, because we have a lot of men who are standing up and saying, not in our name. And that is very critical for us. But most importantly, is about focusing on young people and focusing on youth being able to participate in the dialogue. And I think this report for us is just a culmination of good work that has been done by both men and women, both in our country, but as well as the neighboring countries, because as South Africa, we are like a potpourri of everything. That's we've got people that come from different places and we influence each other. I can see there's progress, and I think this report is going to be one other element of work that we need to make sure that is implemented. And as South Africa, I'm 100% sure that from a government point of view, we are committed. From civil society point of view, are very committed. But from just action on the ground by women and girls themselves. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much for that. And thank you so much for pointing out that it takes all of us, right? So we all have to get involved. Myrna, I'd like to turn to you as a staunch leader of one of the most marginalized communities, Indigenous peoples. Can you share what issues are faced by Indigenous girls and women as it relates to sexual and reproductive health and rights, and the link and how that links to other issues they're facing, in particular, why the justice framework is so critical to overcoming existing barriers?
Thank you. And thank you for inviting me to be part of the Commission for Indigenous Women and Girls in the World. It is very important to bring our voices where decisions are being made. Young girls, Indigenous women faces, in the first place, lack of access to health services in general, to basic services. And when there are services there, these are not organized respecting their cultural values, their beliefs. So it's inaccessible, culturally inaccessible. For we have the highest percentage of girls with being young pregnancy. You go to all of the figures in most of our countries, and you can see girls, children between 10 and 14 years pregnant. And when you discuss with them, they don't learn about sexual rights in their home, because in the majority of the homes, this is something that is secret. You cannot speak about that with them. So they learn about it in other environment and not in a proper way. So there's lack of education also on sexual and reproductive rights. And I would say the other big problem is related with lack of disaggregated data. We usually say Indigenous women are the ones that face the highest mortality rate, but when we go to the figures in the countries, we do not have any type of disaggregated data. So how can you define specific policies if we are invisible? So I think those are some of the main problems that we face. I agree that the justice framework is very important. Indigenous peoples have been struggling a lot to include our rights in international standards of human rights. But we have been advocating that individual and collective rights are equally important and they complement. So just imagine a health service where pregnant women can be attended and they don't speak her language, or the way in which you expect she can deliver that baby is not culturally appropriate for the lady. So we need the individual and collective rights approach included in the organization of services, so these can be delivered in a way that can be really accepted. So and for us in Latin America, that we have advanced with the Montevideo Consensus, that is very important. We have been able to include a holistic approach. You cannot talk about sexual and reproductive rights without land rights. If we are being excluded from our territories, you cannot expect Indigenous women and girls to have access if we are being expelled from our territories and we do not have where to live. You move to another. So the holistic approach is very important. And so the framework of justice is the one that can include all of these causes of oppression and marginalization that we have faced, not only through colonization and neocolonization, but also because of the model of development that is being implemented in our countries, that expels us from our territories and denies our rights. So I really agree with all rights, individual and collective rights for all people and peoples, because we have the right to self-determination. And of course, now is the time. Thank you.
Absolutely, absolutely brilliant. Representation matters. Thank you so much for making that clear. Thank you for your passion. Thank you for being a representative for the voices of those that are unable to speak out for themselves. We're so grateful to have you here today and for your work over the past 3 years and beyond. Thank you, thank you, thank you so much for that. Now, moving on to another group of marginalized folks that lack some access. Martin Kareksanov, while young people are critical in advancing the Nairobi commitments and the ICPD agenda, they're amongst some of the most marginalized groups when it comes to actually exercising their sexual and reproductive rights. Could you share some main messages and recommendations from the report and the Commission's body of work that ensures that young people's needs and rights are met?
Of course, thank you, everyone, and good morning, everyone. I applaud the commitment of being at 8 a.m., 9 a.m. on a long week. Definitely shows your commitment as well. I actually just want to start first with just quick comment as well. What was mentioned is that I was lucky to go to a couple of youth activist events this week, and one of them on Tuesday evening was a queer climate event. And on that one, building upon what you were mentioning, is that there was one clear message that came out of there, is that we can't have climate justice without queer liberation, and we can't have queer liberation in a true meaningful form without climate justice. And there were many in that room. It was all climate justice young activists. They don't work on queer issues, they work on climate issues, but they were all LGBTI. And I think that showcased the importance, and many of them are also indigenous communities and peoples identified and showcased how all it intersects. And for sexual and reproductive justice, like climate justice, cuts across all of these movements and all of this work too. And what Sarah has mentioned very well as well is that it has this transformative potential and power to really unite movements as well. And on LGBT, and particularly on young people, we cannot do that though, anything on reproductive rights or justice, with exceptions, exclusions, compromises. We can't compromise on, we can't compromise on someone's innate human right to adequate education, to them to live free from violence in their communities. We can't deny them their basic human rights and compromise on that just to push sometimes that agenda. And I think this is a critical message the reproductive rights agenda pushes for. And the other thing in the recommendations particularly focuses on youth. We can't achieve reproductive justice without young people being at the forefront, because they do it, they live it in all across the movements, and they're really spearheading it. And there's some critical elements that we've seen that around employment, there's no enough investment progress in youth and employment in particular. And we know that we can't have reproductive rights justice without basic needs being met. We need really to see states and governments, and that was one of the recommendations, invest in youth employment, invest in economic opportunities, in particular for young people. But when we do that, that's also something that the report mentions, is critically important when we bring young people, whether in policy making or designing services, that we do it on their terms, that they are the leading voice. They say what they need, and we design them according to that. And that is a critical message from the reports as well that comes to it. And I think the comprehensive sexuality education was mentioned already, but it can't be comprehensive without being truly inclusive of all communities. And that includes LGBTIQ people, includes youth in humanitarian settings, includes young people with disability. And because CSC has the potential not only to be educational force, but an affirmative space for young people to thrive. So that is another element. And for me, a very proud element that we have recommendation there as well is on the social justice protections. It's something for a really long time we have noticed that we have too many silos within the reproductive rights or other movements within each other. And social protection is a critical element to address this. And we know that many LGBTIQ young people, 64 countries, they're criminalized for who they are. 64. In 50 countries only, they have protection to access healthcare only. So they can face discrimination and that's on sexual orientation. On gender identity is much lower. And that's another indicator for like showcasing it. When we talk about harmful practices, it's important to talk about FGM and child marriage. And it's also important to talk about conversion therapies, a harmful torturous practice that is spearheading, spreading in the US and Canada, as we can see that as well. It's important to talk about sterilization requirements for trans people facing. It's important to talk about surgeries intersex children and young people face as well. I think these intersections are critical to drive us forward. And we know that only, by the way, 13 countries protect from conversion therapies and ban them as well. What's important as well for services, we talked about it's how important it is to have adequate services access. But many LGBTI women and gender diverse and trans people, that is the place they actually face sometimes the most abuse and pushes them away from reproductive services. So we need to have focused protection, especially on this access to them. And I think I can go on, but I don't have time. But I would just, I want to, and one thing that was critically important is that in the scorecard, we have 2 legal framework indicators that were taken off from ILGA World's database, one on sexual orientation, criminalization of sexual orientation, one on incitement of hate crime, in a reproductive rights and justice framework. That's great. That's a great achievement to have that within that. And I'll finish with this message that I said it in Nairobi, and I think is critical, is that our bodies are ours. Our identities and our existence is not up for political debate. Our human rights are not controversial. Our lives are not less worthy. And finally, the message I've learned through our work here is that our fights for justice are intersecting and universal. Thank you.
Absolutely brilliant. Thank you so much for your leadership. I started my career in social impact building the largest immigrant youth movement in US history. I know what it takes to do what you do. I know the opposition that you face every single day. I know how difficult it is to have the people that cause the problems be the one to tell you that you don't have the right to tell them that they need to solve the problem. So, I'm truly grateful for the work that you're doing and truly grateful for your leadership and stewardship in this. Thank you again. Thank you. Now, moving on to Mr. Shangang. We've talked about young people. We've talked about indigenous peoples. We've talked about how individuals can take action. I want you to reflect on the Commission's message and its recommendation regarding the role of parliaments and parliamentarians and how they can be more engaged in advancing the Nairobi commitments and the ICPD goals.
Thank you very much. Let me start by saying that I've been very thrilled to be part of this, the deliberations of the High-Level Commission. And thank you very much, Natalia, for appointing me to this commission. And I am glad that I've been able to bring the parliamentary voice to the discussions. And when I look at the report, I'm really heartened that it recognizes the important role that parliaments play. People usually say the role parliaments can play. And I said, no, the role that parliaments must play. And this is because in all of our countries, parliaments have functions that are constitutionally ordained. It's not like they're going out to try to wrest power from anybody. in every constitution, parliaments legislate, they call government to account, they allocate resources for implementation of programs, and they represent the people. And our role is to marshal parliaments and make them use those powers that they have to good effect. And the one that this commission, the issues that this commission has had to deal with are very relevant to what parliaments must do. And when I look at the title of our report, it is telling, it encapsulates what parliaments are all about. They're about justice, they're about all rights, they're about all people, and they must act now because the challenges are compelling. So the message is, let's go out there, let's use those powers that parliaments have to make a difference. I have seen in our report, we have identified a number of challenges. I think the co-panelists here have referred to those challenges, including those that have been singled out by the co-chairs. We still have high levels of gender-based violence in the world. We still have high levels of maternal death in the world. We still have too many children, far too many children being forced into early marriage and dying in the process of childbirth. And so all of this calls for us to take action. We need to legislate. Parliaments need to legislate against discrimination for all the rights that have been identified in our reports, including safe abortion, I must say, the rights of marginalized communities. You've heard the message here. They cannot pick and choose rights. Parliaments are a mirror of society, and they have to exercise their functions with justice, which means equity, equality, fairness. And that's the message that I think is coming out of this report. At least that is how I read this report. And I'm glad that it gives parliaments their marching orders. The work is just starting, and we should go out there and mobilize parliaments wide to make sure that we achieve justice for all, we achieve rights for all, and we must act now because people are dying as we speak on account of them not being given access to their rights, whether it's right to health, abortion, all of that. So that's the message that I want to bring to you.
Thank you so much. And thank you for that reminder that parliaments and parliamentarians have to be a reflection of society and also reminding us of our own power. Change does not come from the top down, it comes from the bottom up, from the individual to the community. And then you make your parliamentarians and your policymakers do what they're supposed to do. Again, like, Mrs. Shangan said, they have their marching orders. You go out there and you make sure that they read, they understand, that they move forward. Another sector that can be very engaged on this issue and help us move this issue forward is the private sector. The private sector has significant influence in the lives of individuals and of communities. Jean-Willem, if I may turn to you on how corporations can better engage on advancing the Nairobi commitments and the ICPD goals, please.
Thanks. Yeah, so the role of the private sector wasn't that great at the beginning of the ICPD journey. And 4 years ago, there were, of course, a couple of companies that committed to the ICPD and to the 12 commitments, but not many. Many stood on the sideline. But I'm grateful for the inclusion of the private sector in this high-level commission. And together with Marianne, it was our duty to look at from the private sector, so how can we contribute to this agenda? Now, if you look at the conclusions in the report and also the discussion so far, you could argue, well, the private sector is on the sideline and you're very well placed on the sideline. Because we conclude that none of the countries have achieved the 12 commitments. That's great. That's countries' responsibility. So for us, fine. We're off the hook. But what if you would ask the question, which of the companies have achieved the 12 commitments? And so my little conscience called Sarah, what can you do? Okay. So we looked at the private sector and said, look, what can we do as a private sector? Could we apply that framework to a company structure? Have any of the companies achieved the 12 commitments? And what would that look like? And we started looking for some tools out there. And actually, there's quite some around that could be used. You need to modify them a little bit because they were not designed. You'll be surprised. They're not designed for sexual reproductive justice. Yeah? But they can be amended. There was a call for innovation. Yes, we can do that. if you look at the women empowerment principles, very easy. So when I in this journey, I said, okay, well, did we sign as Philips? And no, actually we didn't. Can we sign? And the first question was, can we sign? Can we measure that? Can we actually make that real? Probably we need to do some things, but yes, it starts. Okay, well, let's do that. There is no controversy in signing these kind of things, giving them a framework for a company to move forward on many of the 12 commitments. And then we started to look at, well, there's this ESG stuff. Anybody ESG? It's nothing to do with sexual. It is environment, social, and governance frameworks that a lot of the companies will now have to report against. It's about the social impact that a company can have. Well, if there's something logical, it's your sexual reproductive justice impact. But the standards and the measurements that are being used are not geared to measure that. They're not really geared to measure sexual harassment or paternal leave or menstrual hygiene and all those kind of things. But they can be if you interpret them that way. So then UNFPA and the private sector started to create a coalition for sexual reproductive justice in business. Sarah is a part of that. Marianne is part of that. Others are part of that. And we started to get a growing group of companies who were saying, well, if we look at this from a sexual reproductive justice lens and use the tools that we in business know how to use so well, can we actually make that impact? And I think we can. But the unfinished business is, I think for next year, is how do we use that innovation power, that scaling power, and the fact that the businesses do want to contribute to this agenda if they're being, if you like, enlightened, to actually make a real impact on this agenda. And I think there is a huge untapped potential in the power of the private sector. Now, I was on how we need to form coalitions. I've attended the discussion on health and climate, and queer, on UHC, on pandemic preparedness, on all of those societal challenges. And what resonated was that everywhere there was a talk about, oh, we need more innovation, we need more digitization, we need more private sector engagement. Let's group that, because there's one thing that every CEO would like to be seen in SS. Ask them the right question to act in line with the purpose defined in the SDG agenda, defined in the reproductive sexual justice agenda, because everybody loves to be asked to act within the power of their capacity. That's where the untapped potential for this justice agenda lies.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much for that. Thank you for just an inspiring, engaging, enlightening conversation. Every time I have a conversation with our commissioners, I never want it to stop. But unfortunately, that has to be the end of this conversation with you. Thank you again for your insights, for your recommendations. Incredibly grateful. I'll ask you now to please give them again a round of applause. Thank you. Thank you. As you all take your seats in the auditorium, I'll ask Martin to please stay with us. He is our youth representative. So he will be staying with me here on the stage. Don't leave me. No pressure. No pressure whatsoever. We're just so happy you're here. Amazing. Again, thank you all so much for that incredible conversation. I hope that everyone watching is as inspired as I have been. Please engage with us on social media. All rights, all people, acting now. As you've heard, the commission is quite impressive in its diversity in terms of stakeholder groups that are included and in terms of the diversity of regions, gender, backgrounds, and much more. But an important distinction is also that this commission has been one of the most diverse in terms of age groups. The age groups it encompasses, and has been a truly intergenerational gathering with not just one or two youth representatives, but a substantial number of young people amongst its eminent members. Many of them are here with us today and ready to share their passion, vision, and work with you. Please welcome them to the stage. First, I'd like to welcome to the stage Hatem Aznag, founder and president of a youth-led organization, the Sustainable Development Youth, based in Morocco. They can all join me on the stage, and I'll introduce them as we go. Alexandra Defiskaya let me start that over. Alexandra Defiskaya Chichikova. Close enough. forgive me. Miss Wheelchair 2017 and health advocate originating from Belarus, Jaha Dukere, founder and CEO of Safe Hands for Girls, a grassroots organization fighting to end FGM and child marriage. Jaha hails from Gambia. Welcome. Sangeet Kayasta, coordinator of YPeer Asia Pacific Center, a youth peer education initiative. Sangeet hails from Nepal. Welcome. And of course, Martin, who you've met, board member and chair of the Youth Steering Committee, ILGA World. You met him in our previous session. He is going to continue chatting with us today. Together, they are the youngest members of the High Level Commission and bring the youth voice of the Commission's work. Unfortunately, Commissioners Jayathma Vikranaike, the outgoing Secretary General's Youth Envoy on Youth, was unable to join her fellow commissioners in person, and Laurent Kabase Barunji, president of the Africa Network, AFRIAN, was unable to join us today due to visa issues. Jayathma and Laurence regret that they are unable to make it, but we do hope that they're watching the live stream, and forgive me for mispronouncing their names. Now the reason why we paid so much attention to bringing the youth voices of the Commission here today is because they have some exciting news to share. Now, I will pass the floor on to our youth commissioners for each of them to share a short announcement. We will start first with Hatem.
Hello, thank you. Your Excellency, Dr. Natalia Kanem, Director of UNFPA, Your Excellency, former President Jakaya Kikwete, Votre Excellence, Madame Michaëlle Jean, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, dear participants here in New York and around the world. As the youngest member of the Commission, aged 25 years, I am, together with other youth representatives here, very proud and pleased to share that, along with a high-level Commission's third and final report. Today, we are launching a youth-friendly version and take one on the Commission's body of work. Every day, in all the parts of the world, young people lead by example, by celebrating their diverse identities, by advocating for universal and accessible healthcare, and by demanding a gender transformative and comprehensive sexuality education, free of stigma and stereotypes. You know, you can count on young people to never sit still, to always raise the bar, and to keep pushing what is the right and what is our right. Thank you.
Next up, I'll invite Alexandria to share her remarks. Thank you so much.
Hello, everyone. And the Nairobi Summit was remarkable in many ways, as we have here today. But for us young people, it was a game changer, where we were meaningfully engaged and mobilized in large numbers, including through the amazing sponsorship of over 1,200 young people from all around the world to attend and participate in the landmark summit, and I was one of those lucky young people. These last few months and weeks, young people around the world, with the support of the ICPD25 Follow-up Secretariat at UNFPA and conducted by the UN Major Group for Children and Youth, have gathered in online regional sessions and a global town hall. During these meetings, they discussed the importance to ensuring the continued attainment of young people in the ICPD follow-up and keeping the Nairobi commitments alive as we move into the ICPD 30 process.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Martin, you're up next.
Yes, I'm not good at sticking with this, but speaking of the youth town hall, which was fantastically supported by the major group of children, youth, and Choice for Youth and Sexuality, in particular, there were some great recommendations young people shared that in those spaces. I will just mention a few, and this will be released also in addition soon, so you'll be able to see them as part of the regional town halls and the global one in particular. But young people said something that was mentioned earlier about innovation is that, okay, what does like reproductive justice will look like in the fast developing digital world? We need to really be able to addressing that, especially with increasing AI and technology. The other thing is bringing local experiences, local activists and experts, and informing that work in particular. That is a critical element. Not forgetting about inclusive approaches to LGBTIQ communities, young people, young refugees, and young people with disability being included in moving forward with the commitments. And I think the one thing that came is that young people were unaware of some of the commitments, and many of them, it's been 5 years as well. So many of them are not aware of the ICPD. So they found it so important to have this somewhere available and this to be kept there so they can keep track and see it and follow up all the time what their governments have committed to. And the other thing they said is that something that was said in Nairobi is we can't wait another 25 years to really have meaningful engagement. It has to happen now for young people in all these processes.
Thank you so much for that, Jaha.
So thank you everyone for having us this morning. And I just want to start by telling our co-chairs and Natalia a huge thank you and Saskia and the entire secretariat. It's been an amazing 3 years of learning and growth. But as Martin has said, young people they attach great importance to ensuring that you meet them where they're at. This is also in line with one of the key recommendations of this high-level commission, which is putting forward its call to action over the past 3 years. We need to meet young people on their terms, in their communities, on the ground. This is where you find the lived experiences that needs to inform our program and policies and everything we do, including our approach. From my own experience, allow me to share the work that is currently happening in the Gambia and other places. In the Gambia, we're currently dealing with our National Assembly and Parliament trying to reverse the law against female genital mutilation that was passed in 2015. And it is young people that are at the forefront, surviving survivors like myself, lifting and amplifying our voices. And elsewhere in the Africa, it is young people that are always risking it all to ensure that change is there. Whenever injustice happens, young people are always the people that are not afraid or that are not questioning what they can lose. In the Gambia, for instance, there's a curse by religious leaders basically saying that people like me who are working on the issue of FGM, some calamity would happen to us. Everyone is scared, but young people happen to be the only few people that are saying this cannot affect us, because in a way, the work that we're doing to try to end FGM in our communities is also the work of God.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Jaha. Next, we have Sangeet, please.
Yeah, so we'd like to share, one of the things which kept us all motivated to work with SLC was we know that this report had been used by many people, and then we know also the organizations who have been using it. And that's one of the main motivations behind us, because we knew that the work which we have been doing and the secretariat have been doing was not going on waste. And one of the good things which we also found that many young people were using it, because before this report came out, there were when some young people want to advocate on some issues, it was very difficult for them to navigate. And that was also the reason that we recommended the secretariat of the high-level commission to work on the youth-friendly, adolescent-friendly report, because we know that we are young, but we're not young enough. So the report should be understood by, or at least being this should be the young people as young as 15, 14. They should know about it so that they would go through it and they would make some changes, because I think we are done. We are not done yet, but we are not young enough to make significant changes which younger ones in like some countries at 15-year-old, 14-year-old can make. So we are really thrilled that with the support of Choice for Youth and Sexuality, that they have helped us. They have supported the secretary to bring out this very colorful and very wonderful report, which you can see outside, as well as which you can find in this QR code. And also apparently, like, this is the most wonderful, colorful, youth-friendly report I have seen so far, because I'm working 16 years, and then when they say youth-friendly, they just put some youth faces in the cover. And when you go through the pages, it's like really boring with the data and this and that. But I find this report really youth-friendly, and we all agree that Choice for Youth and the Secretary have done really great job. And we believe that this report will be used by everyone, all the young people, and make some positive changes. Thank you.
Thank you for that endorsement. Thank you so much. Jaha, if I may call on you again, please.
So there's more. Not only are we launching the youth-friendly edition of the Commission's report, we are also thrilled to launch a youth guide on engaging ICPD transformative journey titled From ICPD25 to ICPD30, Keeping the Cairo and Nairobi Commitment Alive. This guide was also prepared by youth organization Choice for Youth and Sexuality, with the support of the High-Level Commission Secretariat. Both the youth-friendly report and the guide have moreover benefited from the input and feedback from a wide range of youth partners and others. We hope you will find a copy of the report and guide here in the room or online, for those of you that are online. And we also invite you to share these resources with those who stand to benefit from it the most. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Jaha. Thank you. Martin, if I may call on you again, please. I can't get enough of you talking, so I'm just, one more time.
We can chat in the break.
That sounds great.
It's unfortunate that Lawrence couldn't join us, but I would have been also her last remarks on this as well. Is I think for any young people watching, in particular, whether you're here in the room or watching the live stream and seeing this, these materials are really designed for you as a young person to empower and engage you in the ICPD agenda. They're really designed to provide you with the tools, knowledge, and inspiration to contribute to the progress made since the Nairobi Summit, and to create a fair, equal, and sustainable future where sexual and reproductive rights are in place for all youth in all of their diversity. And a critical message is that really need to restart all this engine, and it's time to refresh, reflect for some serious ICPD engagement, because it's time up, youth at the forefront.
I love that. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much for that. Thank you all. And thank you for bearing with me as I attempted to pronounce your names and did it poorly. My sincere apologies. But thank you so much for your passion. Thank you for your work. I know what it takes. I've been in your shoes. So grateful for all of the work that you've done. Thank you. Thank you again. Thank you. You can head to your seats. Yes, please. Wow. It's amazing to think we've been here for 2 hours. It doesn't feel like that. It's just been an incredible array of just passionate, amazing individuals that are doing the necessary work to make sure there is justice for all. Now, as we come to the end of our program, I'd like to invite Dr. Kanem back on stage for closing remarks. Welcome, Dr. Kanem.
Thanks so much, Tolu. Excellencies, dear participants, SDG 16 speaks to peace and justice, and Sustainable Development Goal 17 speaks to partnership. So I would like to acknowledge my sister, Winnie Byanyima, Undersecretary General for UNAIDS, and a world leader on rights and choices and grassroots-led community change. Please stand, Winnie, so that we can acknowledge you. Welcome. As this High-Level Commission on ICPD 25 Follow-up draws to a close. There's so much to reflect on, and there are many people to thank. Today was an invaluable opportunity to discuss how we travel forward with these recommendations that the High-Level Commission has provided as guidance. I would like to sincerely thank from the bottom of my heart our two co-chairs and all commissioners, including Her Majesty the Crown Princess Mary of Denmark, because of your tireless commitment, but because of your tireless imagination. What you've produced is invaluable. Thank you. I would also especially thank the governments of Denmark and Kenya, the hosts of the Nairobi Summit on ICPD25, and embarking on that journey has led us to where we are today. It seems to have been an independent yet collective leadership. And now you've provided us with a blueprint to deliver on the critical mission of sexual and reproductive justice for all. 3 authoritative annual reports, and now a youth-friendly report and a guide for youth engagement. This is critical as we rev up to partner more with young people in their leadership as proponents of change. And then you've also provided the commitment scorecard, the map with the country profiles and the online dashboard, which are also extremely useful, and they're going to help us to continue to track the implementation of the ICPD Program of Action and now the Nairobi Voluntary Commitments. Allow me to join in commending the analytic rigor and the supportive excellence of the High-Level Commission Secretariat and all my UNFPA colleagues. At UNFPA, we're well aware that the work doesn't end here. We have to continue to build on this work and the success of this commission. Again, to the commissioners, when you heeded our call, we really did not know in which direction you would take us. But here we are with reinvigorated support for the Cairo agenda. And that, of course, is inextricably linked to the broader 2030 agenda for the Sustainable Development Goals in the second halftime. I also would like to thank, in particular, the civil society partners, the academic partners, the corporate partners, and the implementing partners on the ground, all around the world, who are actioning the Nairobi commitments and will continue to do so. Sexual and reproductive justice cannot wait. All rights, all peoples, action now. So I do hope that the findings of this commission will galvanize us to stay committed to the promises of Cairo, to the buildup from Nairobi. The women and girls of the world who are counting on us have been waiting far too long. The march continues. Adelante. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Kadem, for that fitting closing. We're truly, truly grateful for your leadership, and thank you all for the work of the High-Level Commission on the Nairobi Summit on ICPD25 Follow-up and the launch of the concluding report. Once again, sexual and reproductive justice cannot wait. All rights, all people acting now. I hope that you have all found the time you've invested in joining us on this important event worthwhile. I'm certain that we can all leave this session assured that the work of the High-Level Commission these past 3 years have been meaningful, and its legacy will continue to live through the reports and associated products. Thank you again for joining us, those in the room and those following the live stream. Let's keep the spirit of Nairobi alive and the conversation going online and social media through the hashtags hashtag sexual and reproductive justice, hashtag all rights, all people, hashtag the march continues, hashtag ICPD25, and hashtag ICPD30. My name is Tolu Olubumi, and it has been my honor to guide you through today's program. Thank you all, and goodbye.